One of the more worrying aspects of the Capitol Hill rioters is the fact that as we're learning more details about the planning and coordination that was taking place behind the scenes, a lot of pretty powerful people were involved, people in law enforcement, as we've talked about, in the military, including a PSYOPs officer who has resigned from her specific position within the military. And really, I mean, if you're worried about some sort of government takeover, if you're worried about an actual coup succeeding in this country, you should be concerned about the number of people in positions of power who have been very supportive of this. So let's start off with the head of the Arizona Republican Party. She's put out some pretty terrifying messaging prior to the riots taking place. For instance, on December 19th, Kelli Ward, who is the head of the Arizona GOP, fired off a tweet urging President Donald Trump to cross the Rubicon, referring to the historical event that led to Julius Caesar declaring a dictatorship in ancient Rome. The tweet was shared by former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, who, by the way, as we know, Michael Flynn also wanted Trump to consider martial law in order to steal the election. On January 4th, Ward's Arizona Republican Party tweeted or retweeted Ali Alexander, one of the organizers of the event that culminated in the Capitol siege, who said that he was, quote, willing to give my life for this fight. The Arizona GOP said, he is, are you? Later that day, the Arizona GOP also tweeted, this is what we do, who we are, live for nothing or die for something. And so we're talking about people in political positions, Nando, and I'll describe all the other people in positions of power who engaged in this kind of stuff, and were actually in the Capitol building after it was breached. But what do you make of this? I mean, we had Peter Navarro just today regurgitate lies about voter fraud and how Trump had the election stolen from him. It's just, they don't want to de-escalate it.
Well, I guess I'll say two things. I think one thing is that, again, I mean, I constantly think back at this Alex Perrine piece that talks about how the lunatics are running the asylum in the GOP, in that for decades, they basically like whipped up what they would call like the rubes with like insane right-wing media. But now those people that believe all that stuff. Like it used to be that the conservative establishment kind of read different things from their base, and now the people who are in power in the GOP read the same insane stuff that everyone in there. So yeah, I just think about that all the time because it's the consequences are what we've seen in the Capitol and what we've seen come up in the last week or so. I guess the one hopeful thing that I will point to is that they're doing it in service of Donald Trump, the man, like as a political figure, not in the service of any real kind of political agenda outside of him. Like it really is like a cult of personality in some ways, and in many ways that's a kind of a good thing because he's not going to be in power anymore. So like they're not going to be able to do that again with someone else. Like I just don't think that they're going to find some other person that's going to replace that ability for to whip up votes in the way Trump did.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's just that these people don't just go away, right? So the conspiracy theories still exist. You have conspiracy theorists within Congress who are threatening to impeach Biden, like as soon as he's inaugurated, which is more lunacy. But then you look at who was in the Capitol building, who was part of the organizing and planning that took place. And to be sure, this wasn't something that just organically happened on the day that it happened. This is something that was planned for quite some time, right? And so there was a video that surfaced showing these insurrectionists discussing what their game plan was when they were inside the Capitol building. We have two videos to share with you on that. later in the show. But I do want to give you some more details about lawmakers who have been implicated in this. For instance, West Virginia State Senator Mike Azinger, who was part of the Capitol Hill riots, said in a radio interview Monday that he hopes that President Donald Trump calls us back, and added that the crowds loyal to Trump are, quote, inspiring and patriotic. He also said this, he says, I think the president laid out the point of the mission. It was to pressure the Republican congressmen to challenge the electoral votes. And by the way, there were at least 6 Republican state legislators involved with what happened on January 6th. In fact, only one lawmaker though has been has resigned. One lawmaker was known to have gone inside the Capitol and since has been charged with a crime and resigned. That's West Virginia State Delegate Derek Evans, who resigned last Saturday a day after federal prosecutors charged him with entering the US Capitol. He had actually live streamed himself with a mob of Trump supporters. And here's this classy fellow who's now gonna have to deal with the consequences. There he is.
Yeah. I love the idea of like live streaming yourself while you're doing crimes, that's just the funniest thing. That's just the funniest thing ever to me. I mean, it just strikes me as like, they're all disappointed that Trump didn't support them, and it's just like, it's kind of poetically perfect because Trump sells out everyone that he deals with, like he has contempt over them because a con artist has contempt for his marks. Right, that they really hate their marks. They think that they're stupid and they have just a total contempt. And Trump has always absolutely hated his base on some deep level. So it was only inevitable that he would sell them out in the moment of truth. Like they were like, but wait, you told us to do this, and now where are you? You're not going to protect us or anything like that. And he's like, yeah, no, sorry, you're on your own. Take it easy,
Well, I mean, he has pardoned all sorts of awful criminals, and I'm talking about war criminals as well. But so maybe that's what they were thinking. But to your point about how they were live streaming, taking pictures of themselves, most of them weren't, trying to cover up their identities. They felt entitled to do what they did, right? I don't think that any of these people expected to face any consequences for what they did. And that's terrifying.
Well, on some level, like if they're fans of Trump and Trump is the president and the president says, go do this, it's okay. Like he is the boss guy. He's the head of the government, like on some level, that there's that going on where if the president tells you to do it and then you go and do it, you don't expect to face any consequences. I mean, obviously like we wouldn't think that because we don't like the guy, but like, yeah, I mean, I think that there's an element of that, like just watching the videos of them crying when they're like being arrested at the airport, when they land and things like that. Like it's very funny on some level, but like also the president of the United States did tell them to do what they did.
Yep.
Yes. So like that's what happens when the boss man tells you to do something, and a lot of people are gonna go ahead and do it.
So I want to name some other people who are either close to power or are in positions of power. For instance, the son of a Brooklyn judge was also arrested for his role in the Capitol riots. His name is Aaron Mostofsky. And he was taken into custody in Brooklyn and faces 4 federal charges, including theft of government property. The criminal complaint also said the police vest he wore, which included body plates and side ballistics, had a value of nearly $2,000. The riot shield, it said, is valued at $256. He even stopped, by the way. This guy was not covering his identity. He was in the Capitol building, having no problem, engaging in the rioting that we saw. And he stopped to give reporters. Reporters is a very generous label here, but he spoke to people from the New York Post, and he said this: "We were cheated. I don't think 75 million people voted for Trump. I think it was close to 85 million." Oh, okay, great, because he's an expert on the election, and did a hand count himself to make sure that the election wasn't stolen. But there's more. there are cops, of course, who are now facing consequences for taking part in it as well. Among those arrested and released on Wednesday were Thomas Robertson, 47, and Jacob Fracker, 29, of Rocky Mount, Virginia. Both officers with the Rocky Mount Police Department, they have been placed on administrative leave. There's video evidence, photos of them, in the building. Robertson was allegedly quoted on social media saying, CNN and the left are just mad because we actually attacked the government, who is the problem, and not some random small business. The right in one day took the US Capitol, keep poking us.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's great. Again, I have to cling to this idea that because Trump is so sui generis and that there's just no one like him, for good and bad, that all these pretenders that are going to try to replace him, like no one's going to be able to get the same amount of insane devotion that he's been able to foment amongst a certain chunk of the population. Like I just don't see it happening for any of these other jokers, right? Like there's something about Trump that he's just different. He just is different from all that, and no one's really like him. So once they've gotten that hit of the drug, I don't know that they're going to be able to go to the soft stuff like Marco Rubio or Josh Hawley or someone like that.
Oh no, Marco Rubio is super charismatic and can definitely create a following just based on cult of personality. Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. Little Marco Rubio, very little, very tiny.
No, but we need to do something about like the rot within the military and these police departments. Like it's an issue. And it wasn't just those two cops who are now, forced to resign. There was a cop from Houston who had to step down after he's facing charges for being part of the riots. And dozens of other cops are currently being investigated. 2 Capitol Police police officers have also been suspended pending an investigation. We don't know specifically why those 2 Capitol Police officers are specifically being investigated, but some reporting indicates that it has to do with Bake Alaska's stream, which showed them taking selfies with these insurrectionists. So look, it's a long-standing issue in the country, right? Even before Trump, the fact that white supremacists have infiltrated both the military and the police departments. All you need is a dog whistling president who is a little savvier than Trump. And I'm worried that in the future they might be able to pull off something more than what they did. And I just never thought that, in my lifetime or even in the future, we would see people breach the Capitol the way that we saw last week. And the fact that they were assisted by people in positions of power is something to be concerned about.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.